how this process would work. Would they have some standards, or is this just like planning commission's discretion? Because I think the noise part of it is something that the neighbors are worried about. So like a sports court would be crazy to have in the setback.
Agree with that.
How, like, how do they evaluate it for R1A lots right now?
Let me bring up the criteria. One second.
That's why I was specific, you know? Because people aren't gonna, the only Scrooge is gonna say they don't wanna hear from the kid.
Coming to the pools and coming to the sports courts and coming on the gyms.
We're not talking about sports courts.
I understand, but it's not the same as R1. I'm not talking to you, I'm just talking to you.
Okay, that's good. Else you'd be thrown out. You already left once. What the heck? Why did you come back?
You guys have worn me down.
How do you
Beauty
think
of
we feel?
government.
How do you guys think about this? It's gonna be owned by one guy, the apartment. He's gonna control the common area on the perimeter, and it's good to have him come in for a special permit from you to see if he wants to install something. Or it's gonna be condominium lots, and nobody will own it. It'll be an HOA that owns it. And the same thing, you want the HOA to come in. So it's not gonna be an individual guy putting out a swing set or a barbecue set. He's gotta go through either the main owner or the HOA.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when it gets,
So they have to come before the planning commission and the residents have an ability to appeal to the council.
So, yes, exactly.
Residents have to be notified.
And here are the findings for a special structures permit. A, that the proposed building or structure will not negatively impact neighboring properties with respect to privacy and view. B, the proposed building or structure complies with other development standards, restrictions, or limitations for the proposed building or structure such as height and landscaping screening. And C, the granting of the special structure permit is consistent with the objectives of the general plan in this title, meaning the zoning code. So, good. Noise screening, that would be addressed in a staff report that would go to the planning commission, have public comment, discussion. If it was then appealed, it would come before the city council.
okay, well,
That's-
one of
that's
the
the
council
standard
members is
Okay.
gone, so you might as
With,
well
with,
move on.
with limitations on the property line like you already had in R10, RM10.
For the accessory structures in the RM10, yes. So then, now that I think we've moved on from RM10, the next question is, should the same provision apply to RM20 and RM40? This is a little bit more nuanced because the owner in this case would be the schools. So in that situation, it might not make sense for the owner to come forward with a special structures permit to get approval for these amenity areas, and it could be incorporated as part of the master plan update.
But these schools already have those facilities.
Right.
They have
So-
pools, they have tennis courts, they have sports courts,
Well,
indoor
if they want
and
to add a
outdoor.
playground, do they have
For their
to
tenants.
make a change to their master plan?
They would have to, yes, seek a change through a conditional use as part of their master
And does
plan
the
update.
master
So it's
plan-
already getting at the special structures kind of lens.
Sacred
through that
Heart
vein.
has those
So,
farm
yeah,
kids.
it would not apply.
Playground.
But don't we have sound ordinances in place that are gonna protect people from all this loud?
We do have
raucous-
noise ordinances in place, yes.
Right, so even, I mean, we had cases before, we changed our sound ordinance and made it tighter, and it was about a neighbor in my neighborhood that was complaining about kids having a pool party at their house.
If I
So,
lived next to you, I'd
It
complain.
was you, I thought, that had the pool party.
So,
And you didn't address it. You made the sound level higher.
so Menlo College for their
Yeah.
RM40. So if they want to add, because that's the one where there will be a lot of
Yeah.
people.
The young people.
Young people and, people with
Teachers.
kids and stuff like that. And it's a taller structure where people were not allowing balconies, so they're not going to have access. Most of the residents will not have access to private barbecues and stuff like that.
To
So
what?
to having like grills,
Private barbecue.
because if it's a 4-story building, there's no balconies allowed. So I'm just curious for RM40, given that it is not adjacent to any R1A lots, if there should be accommodations for that specifically
Yeah,
to
you know,
allow.
the school probably doesn't want individual barbecues in their apartment building. you
Yeah.
know.
Not allowed
There's
on
no
balconies
We're not
anyway.
allowing
Right,
balconies,
so,
so it's
you
It's like
know,
fire
I
hazard.
don't think that's, yeah.
and they're not near
that's
any
not-
R1A
Yeah.
lots anyway, so they
don't
should be
think-
able to make
yeah.
something that people can, I mean, if that's faculty housing, they're gonna live there potentially for
Yeah.
a long time, so.
Yeah,
Well,
they're the,
Faculty
But
housing
what we
at
just-
Stanford has
what
really
we just
beautiful
did for the
kid zones and
planning
stuff.
commission, that's for
Not talking Stanford.
RM10.
Right, so that's why I'm asking if RM40, we would allow more flexibility for RM40, given that it's not near any R1A.
The RM40
I don't think
area
so.
has,
I do think
has
so.
a
It's
bunch
gonna be
of
stricter.
stuff
Can we-
already.
Right, but like, are they gonna want barbecues or whatever, you know? That's what I'm saying.
No, but they have
I
a
think
on-site
An apartment on a
cafeteria that
high-rise
makes whatever they
on
want.
campus, you're
So
not gonna need
we've settled it for
barbecue.
the RM10. What are we doing for RM40?
I'm sorry, I went to the bathroom. What did you guys solve while I was in the bathroom?
Wait,
What did I
wait.
miss?
They were going
No,
to
you
allow
were
the
gone, so
special
we took a
structures
quick
permit.
vote.
It's
Sorry.
what you wanted.
Yeah, it's
It's
exactly
gonna
what you
go
want.
to the commission? Okay.
Yes. So now the discussion is how to apply this to the RM40. And whether or not the
Do it the
town
same
should
way.
rely on the school sites seeking amendments here through their master plan update. But then there was also just discussion about the fact that the school sites aren't going to accommodate private open space like we're anticipating on the RM10. So perhaps it should be more gracious here to make sure that the school can provide these amenities immediately and in proximity to the residential site that's being developed.
Personally, I think we should, or just punt it back to, it's one complex. It's not a lot. We're not putting out too much burden on our planning commission. So if we decide to do it for that one, why don't we have all these addressed by the planning commission?
Oh, great.
I'm having difficulties reading Councilmember Lewis's face.
Hey, you want to say yes?
Would you
I-
like to
I mean, I think we
vocalize your
should have it
concerns?
apply to RM20,
I'm
but
so
not-
sorry.
I think
Thought you'd get
RM10,
it done.
I think RM20 and RM40 are very different
I
from
just-
RM10. And the reason is because the tenants are going to be school staff or students. And the schools are focused on them and, and they already have things like sports courts and pools and some of the amenities that they would want. There are some things they don't want. And actually, Stacy raised an issue that made sort of little light for me, which is, are we allowing balconies in RM40?
No, I think we said no earlier.
Well, I haven't heard anything about that.
No, we're not allowing balconies.
No balconies, okay? Because when you look at apartment buildings that go up that high, they usually have the ability for the person to
They have a
walk
little
outside.
faux thing,
But the
with the
people-
windows
well,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Well, they might
The
have a
residents
window,
didn't
but the
That's
window
all
is.
design. It's all
Okay.
matter of design.
Let's
Anyway,
move on.
we need to move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
We need to move on.
I'm not saying we should,
Okay.
So it sounds like the consensus here is that amenities like that are listed here should be allowed within the developable area
40.
or the developable site.
for RM 2040,
Yes.
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so then I'm gonna go ahead
Wait,
and move
sorry,
on.
sorry. So I think yes for 40, but RM20, so we would allow it in the setback for RM20 or, because
No,
they're
the
only dealing with
developable
one.
site is
The
not the setback.
Okay.
developable side is
Okay,
where
yeah,
they
then
would-
that's fine.
I'm gonna pivot back to the PowerPoint presentation, because at this point, we're really just covering things that we've already talked about in RM10, and it should be kind of the easier phase of the RM20 and 40 discussion. So we discussed the development standards. The RM20 is really more aligning with what was already covered in the RM10, and there weren't any issues raised relative to the RM40 height and setbacks. So moving on to site design, we covered the first bullet point, which had to deal with the allowance of these outdoor activities. The other issue that I want to identify is that we changed the driveway width from 20 to 26 feet.
Yeah.
Then we have this discussion about the landscape screening, timing of planting, and the height of planting. I would assume that we want to be consistent with the RM10 for this provision.
Yes.
Also, window details, as I identified, this wasn't specifically indicated in the planning commission's motion, but I think the intent here would have carried forward to wanting to have those upper level windows with the same treatment. So we'll apply the RM10 standard there.
And
Se-
didn't we change it to 12 feet instead of just 8 feet for the screening?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
Yeah, she said she's gonna be the same.
okay.
And then for site lighting, we had the conversation about how to amend the language here to make it clear that this is for communal space
With windows
with windows that face the exterior.
that face
Of the
R1,
property.
R1A lots.
Then we have the discussion on the trash and recycling enclosures to have a minimum height of 6 feet, and what we'll add here is a maximum height of 8 feet. And then we have the parking requirements specifying, providing some description of bicycle parking racks, identifying the vehicle miles traveled provision. And then I explained this earlier tonight, way back when, 4 or 5 hours ago, about the intent of livable space wrapping parking areas that are at grade or above.
I don't want to slow down the process, but when you're talking about a school, they should have a little more robust bicycle. Okay, we don't want a lot of cars driving into Menlo College and to Menlo School because that's the big issue with the traffic that they bring. So we encourage them to ride their bikes. So they need to have a little more robust than we would put in a little apartment complex. And I urge you to tighten it up.
Why are we not requiring more on-site parking for the RM20 and the RM40?
This is because by their nature as lower income housing developments, they're exempt from parking requirements by the state. So they don't have to provide a certain number of parking. Based on the individuals that will likely be housed in this area, they're not anticipated to require a lot of parking. And these sites are generally within proximity to a major transit stop.
Both of them.
So all of those are factoring into more of a reduced approach for parking.
And
they're gonna
school-
require parking. I mean, that, when we talked to the college, they said if they're gonna build these, they have to build a parking structure.
Yeah, I mean, I understand all of that and that makes sense, but in terms of impact on the neighbors, if there is no parking and we're adding all this housing, they're gonna start parking on the neighboring streets.
So, well, one thing that we do anticipate moving forward is that when they occupy a parking lot, which is proposed in Menlo College and Menlo School, they will need to come forward to the council with an alternative parking program. And that's tied to their master plan update. And
Okay.
so they're going to have to propose that separately and distinctly from the housing anyway.
Okay,
And Menlo School has an entire transportation demand management program that they're required to implement as well.
yeah,
And
But this is a
hopefully they
little
are.
different from that because that's for people that are coming in on a daily basis and this is for people who are there permanently. So they're gonna have, but they have to come up with a solution. There's no parking signs on the streets around the schools.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the bicycle parking requirement to council members Widmer's point is one bicycle parking space per dwelling unit. And that's really getting at that these are likely individuals or one person households.
This isn't gonna guide them. They're gonna figure out what they wanna do on their own.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we should have a minimum and I'm not sure just a bike rack is gonna do it. We should probably come up with something else, but
Yeah,
I'll leave it to you.
We could require,
Have stuff like they have at the train stations. you know.
Like a dedicated room to bicycle storage?
A lot of the dorm rooms don't.
I
have
thought you said you were
bicycles.
trying to keep the biking stuff minimal until we develop our master plan and that the
But that's not
master
gonna
plan
be in
will
the
go.
colleges. You know.
Well, we are.
Well,
And the direction of the bicycle master plan is still kind of up to the council to provide areas that you'd like to see development in.
the only reason I bring it up, you mention it, you know, at a site that's gonna have 5 or 6 houses or 4 houses. And there might be 3 bikes there. But at the college, you're gonna have 300. Okay, and I think that we need to have something a little more robust than say, you know, we're gonna put a little bike rack there. My 2 cents, I think we should be a little bit more robust. Like they do with the train stations and things like that up in the city.
So would that be something you'd want to see as part of the residential development under RM 2040? Or is that something that you would expect me as the town planner to communicate as the schools are developing their master plan updates and addressing TDM? Because 300 bicycle racks would accommodate way more than the 20 units that we're looking at each one of these sites on Menlo School.
I think
So
it's, I think
the
it's fine.
conversation with the school heads about bicycles and what they are anticipating and how they are kind of thinking about planning for that. And that we would like to see, you know, a draft of what they're doing because we have some ideas of our own.
So,
If
so
it's
that,
not
that
com-
goes into
if
the
it's not
master plan
enough, okay.
discussion.
If you wanna
Yeah.
put it in the TDM, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Traffic
And I would
demand management.
I would say if we are not requiring car parking, they should be thinking about bike parking, is how I'm viewing it. And I don't think it's a reasonable expectation that people are gonna put their bikes in their, like, put it up an elevator on a 4-story building. That's kind of a
A lot of
wow.
people like to bring their bikes into their bedrooms.
Yeah,
I
that just,
gotta tell you.
so
Yeah,
I'm,
but
I
some
don't
of
care
these
how it
small-
happens,
That's
but I hope
exactly
they
what they'll
plan for
do.
it.
Some of these small dorms are not gonna be big enough to have a bike and a
It's
bed.
there, they'll figure it out.
Okay,
No. I've
so
seen
with
it.
that, moving on to staff's recommendation. And this gets to the direction that I indicated we would need from you tonight, continuing the CEQA items, the Atherton general plan, and moving past the first reading for the zoning code modifications and zoning plan update
As amended.
as amended. All of it as amended.
I agree with all of them.
Okay.
No motion, please.
So
You feel that you
I-
have enough input from us? on everything?
Absolutely. I expect I'll receive more from all sides over the next 2 weeks. I think there was some direction from Mona early on that really at this point, changes need to be minimal and minor. Rewriting a really complex area of the code is going to be difficult to meet that bar. Tweaking the number, not so challenging, but we want to limit the extent of discussion that we need to have on October 16th.
But we
so
haven't
do we have to?
seen what we're voting on. We've
Right.
just discussed what we're voting on, so we're assuming that the consensus that we've had on every one of these topics is gonna be properly reflected
Exactly.
in what's written, and if it's not, it's gonna need to change, and if that's material, that's the way it is.
Right.
We believe in
But tonight we
being-
have to make a motion, right, to introduce and
Continue.
discuss.
Oh.
We're continuing again?
No, no.
You're
no.
continuing
No.
the first 2 items.
Yeah.
To the public hearing on October 16th.
Yes.
And introducing the ordinance.
So we're making a motion to do that?
Can you do all those in one motion?
No.
Well,
No.
no.
Just read 'em
I'm
all.
just like to make a motion that we're introducing.
I move that we continue
excuse
items
me.
1 and 2
Okay.
to the October 16th meeting.
I second that.
I'll,
All in favor?
aye.
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 I'll move that we introduce and discuss as a first reading the proposed amendments to the Atherton Municipal Code and zoning map and provide And as we have been providing directions to staff regarding any changes to be considered as part of a second reading on October 16th, 2024.
I second that.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
No?
I
So we're
move
good?
that we adjourn.
Did I
this
do something
meeting.
wrong, Mona?
Yep.
No,
Mona
no,
wants
no.
to
Can we just-
interject.
Sorry, can we just reflect for the record that that was unanimous for both of those motions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mona.
Woo, adjourn.